It's showtime, folks. Good morning. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit on Friday, Freewheeling Friday, May 15th. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me at People's_Pundit on Twitter. I'm solo today, so Tim is traveling. So we get to do a little bit about what I want today. We're going to have to get some bad news out of the way, some bad economic news, but that's what it's all about today. Whiny whistleblowers and entitled experts, and the damage they have done, their agenda has done to the American worker. And we're going to go through some economic data for in a little bit. But let's first get this Richard Burr story out of the way because, folks, this is what Donald Trump ran against. I mean, he ran against the entitled experts who know everything, but got our country involved in endless wars that cost trillions of dollars. He ran against stupid ideas like shutting the economy down and committing economic suicide. So we're going to go a little hard on him today. But what do all of these stories have in common? All right, because it's really not, about Donald Trump. This isn't Blame Donald Trump Day. All of these stories, Richard Burr, this whistleblower we're going to talk about from HHS that was testifying yesterday, the Fauci's of the world. What do all of these people have in common? They have in common with their agenda damages everyday Americans. They damage the life. They damage the livelihood. They threaten, and dare I say at this point, they threaten them. Trump, he calls the media the enemy of the American people. I'm going to be in a little bit rare form today. One, it's Freewheeling Friday. And two, I'm getting sick of watching these numbers. I tried to mentally prepare myself for these numbers, but they just piss me off. So I'm at a point where I really just, I'll put a little smiley face on it. Today's particularly bad for me, folks, because we're going to go over the retail sales numbers. And that was an industry where pre-Trump, under Obama, they were always very weak. It underscores consumer spending. We're still 2/3 of consumer spending economy, but this was an industry, a sector, or whatever you want to call it, where, the experts just told us that they're not coming back. It's not coming back. It's never going to be as good as it was before, right? And then under Donald Trump, that was not true. We basically, as a country, we proved that was not true. So there are things that are very important in our economy. Consumer spending is one of them. Small business being the engine of this economy is another. And we're going to go over a new survey. It's a completely new survey. We've never covered this before. The Census Bureau just started it because of the measuring. They wanted to measure the impact mitigation efforts had on small businesses, on the economy. And it's really incredible. They are doing a great job. It's constantly rolling. So we're able to track this and just keep an eye on it. And we got great graphics. I'll wind up just sharing my screen so it's interactive so I can show you guys. We're going to go through, did it have an extremely negative impact? Did it have an extremely positive impact? And we'll show you the national average versus different industries, because you have this joker yesterday. And actually, let's start with him, Rick Bright. You have this joker, all right, coming out as another so-called whistleblower, and the same thing with the other whistleblower in the Ukraine and in the Ukraine impeachment effort. All of these people have in common that whether you like Trump or you don't, it's really irrelevant. You don't want to spend your hard-earned money on corrupt nations. You don't want to give them foreign aid. That's when you elect Donald Trump, he goes in there, he puts an end to it. They don't like that. So they try to stop you. You want to have a great economy. You want to bounce back. You don't want your economy you don't want to commit economic suicide and shut down your business and give up your God-given right to pursuit of happiness. They don't like that. And really, let's take a look at what this guy, Rick Bright, had to say yesterday. What he really had to say was a dire warning. And we'll get into Richard Burr because that ties all into it. I'm going to circle back to what the theme is over 3 years. I don't really care about Donald Trump. This really has nothing to do with it. This has to do with everyday Americans getting hurt because they don't want to allow you to have your say. And these people who think they're smarter than you, they disagreed with your decision. The economy was romping and they think they're smarter than you. And then they put their heavy hand in it and they destroy everything. Everything these people touch turns to, you know what? everything. They're like the opposite of the Midas touch. The opposite. So this guy, Rick Bright, he comes out yesterday and he's got a dire warning, the media says. Number one, the administration didn't act soon enough. They didn't do enough. Number two, he's warning if we open too early, like Fauci, that there'll be an outbreak, more deaths, blah, 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 blah. I don't know how many charts I got to, today's a bit of a frustrating day for me. I don't know how many charts I got to show you. I don't know how many columns. I make them up as pretty as I can make them. They're columns, they're bars, they're pies, they're lines, they're stocks, they're spleens, they're area spleens, they're bubbles. I mean, I got charts coming out of my ears. They don't support the fear porn that these people have been pushing. So that's this guy's major problem with Donald Trump and the response this administration had. He fears we'll open up too early. For Mr. Bright, who earns $285,000, $285,010 annually, apparently did not show up for work for over a month. He's fine with this economy being shut down. We'll show you the map in a little bit. DC is the most restricted area in the country. It's not even open. He doesn't come to work. He's fine, though, with the economy being shut down. But he wants it shut down for you. Mr. Bright wants to see another 35 million Americans out of work. That's his major problem. And, of course, the media eats it up. I do want to read the Health and Human Services statement from them because we were off air when it came on yesterday. I don't think I've ever seen a statement like this out of a government agency in my life. Here it is. Rick Bright was transferred from his role as BARDA director to lead a bold new $1 billion testing program at the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, which is critical to saving lives and reopening America. Mr. Bright has not yet shown up for work, but continues to collect his $285,010 salary while using his taxpayer-funded medical leave to work with partisan attorneys who are politicizing the response to COVID-19. If you guys recognized his attorney yesterday at the hearing, it's because it's Deborah Katz, a complete partisan hack who you might remember from the Kavanaugh hearings. She represented Christine Blasey Ford. This is what we got. These people just keep it's just the same dirtbags over and over and over, just keep reemerging. They have a new client. They'll put up a GoFundMe, even though he makes all this money. Because that's their scheme. They're schemers. These are grifters. These are dirtbags. They'll make money hand over fist while criticizing the president for trying to pressure these governors to reopen the economy because the science and the evidence does not support keeping your family from pursuing your God-given rights. And at this point, it's having just a horror. There were some of these numbers when this all started. People called me Johnny Raincloud. This is just you're looking on the negative side of things all the time. I am not a negative person. Anybody who knows me will tell you I am not a negative person. I am an extremely optimistic person. I have incredible faith in American businesses, American ingenuity, and the American worker. We are the country, whether you are Protestant or not. This work ethic in this country is the Protestant work ethic. There has been nothing like it in the history of the world. Nothing. But I'm also a realist. And even some of these numbers that are coming out now are worse than I expected. And it's unnecessary pain. This was avoidable, unnecessary pain. And I'm not trying to be Johnny Raincloud here today. I'm just getting a little bit tired. Weeks and weeks and weeks, folks. Weeks and weeks. I've had to deal with people who, some of them, they want the president to fail. So anything they think, they don't care how much it'll hurt you. They don't care. They just want the president to fail. They want him to lose in November. They don't care. And then you have others who are just so quick and they just want to support the president, blindly almost. Sorry, but blindly. and they don't really critically think. We lose our ability. That's why the crisis works. We lose our ability to think critically, to stop the ahistorical decisions really quick, and just to think about what is going on. They always paint these two ends of the spectrum. You either want to kill people because you want to open up too early because you're greedy, or it's the other side of the spectrum where you just, you want to shut everything down and collapse everything and destroy them, as if there was never a middle ground here. We're going to head to the middle ground because these horrible numbers that are coming are going to force us to that middle ground that people like me have advocated for weeks, for months now. What are we in? Lockdown day 70 something? What is this? Anybody even keeping track anymore? One of you guys out there, I always look at what you're saying. Anybody keep track of what day we are on for lockdown? I think I stopped counting at 60 something because I just got annoyed with it. All right. So this guy's a joker. What are the politics of it? Because this is really where I come from. All right. This is my wheelhouse. It's just numbers and looking at the politics of this stuff. It's almost like Democrats learned absolutely nothing. Who crafts political strategy for these idiots? If they didn't have the media helping them, if they didn't have a media handicap, these people would never win an election. They're that stupid, or not even stupid, just like out of touch. They didn't understand Americans didn't give a crap about Ukraine and giving foreign aid to Ukraine. That was their hard-earned money. They're tired of meddling in the world. They just want to focus on domestic politics, their own families, their own communities, their own state governments, their own children's education. We're day 65. Thank you, Maddie. Wow. They didn't care about that. So what do? They bring in a bunch of experts, some foreign policy experts, which, by the way, I've told you guys before if you watch the show, DC is where a failed foreign policy academic who couldn't defend their thesis goes to make a living. Because that's the only place in the world where they believe these crackpot theories about international norms. When in real life, the world is governed by realism. In the international state of anarchy, and states pursue power for survival. They pursue their own interest for survival, but not in that town. In that town, they have some crazy idea where you throw money at a bunch of corrupt oligarchs and somehow that's going to make their country a democracy. And they believe in the crackpot idea that Western democracies don't war with each other as much as everybody else. It's total nonsense. It's not supported by empirical evidence. Bruce Russer failed defending his thesis, couldn't even try a second time. Yet that is the predominant theory or something along those lines in Washington, D.C. and among our foreign policy elitists. They're either neocons who believe in the primacy of U.S. power. They want to shape the world in their image, kind of like God created man in his image. It's a little sick. Think about it. Or they believe in another form of liberal internationalism, where if everybody was just a democracy, we wouldn't kill each other. It's all malarkey. It's not true, but they live in their own world. So they don't really see it. Americans are like, I'm tired of this. So they put all these dumb experts on a panel. They think that's going to work. Donald Trump's numbers never look better. If the election was held during the time of impeachment, Donald Trump would have wiped the floor with their best candidate. So they come out of that. That's a complete failure. They come out of that, and now they decide, wow, this is a great opportunity to destroy the man's best argument for re-election, which is the economy. That went to the heart of his justification, episode 21, presidential justifications. All right. That went to the heart of his justification. That was his Achilles heel. They don't look at it like how many Americans are we going to hurt. They don't give a damn about that. They want to win. They want their power. They want power. That's it. Democracy is not legitimate unless they're the ones in control of it. So here we are again with another tool expert, because that worked great the first time. Here we are again with another tool with the partisan attorneys, the same quacks, the same scumbags. Go start a GoFundMe. And they're arguing against the American worker. That's what their argument is. I dare them to make this an election versus the American worker, because that's what they're doing. Their own stupidity, as you guys know, I think Trump is very vulnerable now. He was always kind of vulnerable just because he was controversial, but too many people liked his policies and liked his results, even if they didn't like him. And that was the Democrats' main problem, just like it was Hillary Clinton's problem. All right. And they needed to be able to take that out. They needed to handicap that because they need a handicap for everything. They can never play fair. They're like those kids who, they remind me of the kids back in like New York on the block. We'd go out and play baseball or whatever it may be. You know, they're doing good. They're having a great time. The minute they strike out or it's your turn at bat, they cry, take their ball, go home. That's the way they remind me. That's how they need a handicap. Like that was definitely not a strike, you know, but whatever, I'll give it to you. And if not, their little lip will start quivering. They'll run home like little babies, you know. I mean, they will absolutely. Somebody, you know, Jeff says, you know, if they win re-election and Dems get the House, they'll try impeachment again. You know, Jeff, we're going to see in next week because there's just a ton of document. We've been through most of them at this point. We want screen graphics to show you guys. I'll make the case next week that it's worse than that. They'll try to prosecute these people if Donald Trump loses. You know, I mean, this has nothing to do with politics. I'm just trying to speak plainly here. If Joe Biden wins, Joe Biden will not really be the president. The people around him will be in charge. The same people who are being now exposed for abusing power will roll back into town. The media will help them choreograph it. They'll look like they're coming riding on a donkey or something, you know, with the palms waving. They'll make it look good. And then they will use the levers of government to prosecute everyone and anyone who did not get in line to get rid of this man over the last 4 years. There will be people who will be, whatever you want to call it, prosecuted, persecuted. They'll go after Trump himself. They'll try to make an example of him. This is really, I always try to explain this to people. This has always been a race to like indict. Like they didn't really realize who they were playing with. Like thought this was a game or something. These people are not playing around. They're not playing around. And if they win, they definitely win. They don't. So, but I want to get back to I really want to focus on the economy here because they run out this next guy, and I don't know where they're going with this. Do they think like they're going to bring this guy out and in the coronavirus bill, the first one, the CARES Act, the first version of the CARES Act, they got their committee to investigate the president. That got through. So we always, I said, keep your eyes on this. The day it passed, keep your eyes on this. This will be impeachment 2.0. And then they roll this guy out. He's a vulnerable incumbent, yet I feel like they're making such bad political decisions. They could defeat themselves. You bring out some expert who makes almost $300,000 a year, lives high on the hog compared to the rest of the country. 35 million people out of work. It's more than that, by the way. We'll get there. It's more than that. Numbers we've not seen since the Great Depression. And you're going to bring out some entitled expert moron who's going to argue that we need to keep this thing closed more until what? Another 20? When is it enough? Another 20, 25 million? I mean, when's it enough? What's good enough for you? What level of disaster is good enough for you? All right, let's look at some of this. Let's look first at the advanced retail sales number. All right, I was going to go to Burr first, but because it has really so much to do with what I'm saying here, let's kick this up a notch. Here's the advanced retail sales number for April. They collapsed 16.4%. Here's the year to date. There it is right there. So, you know, giving the trend throughout. Look at this, though, folks. Throughout the period of time where they were pushing for a recession, pushing like hell to hurt you just so they could get a political advantage, you were still spending money. You were still confident enough. And by the way, the savings rate was still solid, 7, close to 8 around this period of time right here. It didn't collapse until it absolutely collapsed. Like you were still spending money. Why does this matter? Again, this was an industry. This was an area, an economic indicator during the Obama eras. All right. And you can actually see them here. It went up. I mean, the trend is up. The Great Recession is here in the gray shaded area. It did not bounce back the way we had seen it bounce back in the past. And look at totals, by the way. Look at the totals. Very weak. I mean, this was a weak recovery. Obama was a weak recovery. We had a lot of dips in between. Under Donald Trump, we started to see some really, really nice numbers in total. This was, where the argument was the brick and mortar's dead, right? Even though, by the way, online sales are tracked by the Census Bureau. So that was always a stupid argument. But the idea was this was a brick and mortar is dead. Retail sales just are never going to be that strong anymore. That wasn't true. But anyway, let's look at the headlines here, and we'll move on to something. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I just want to show you and give you an idea before we go into the new Census Bureau survey on the specific impact business owners say not the virus itself, the mitigation efforts have had on their business. So the U.S. Census Bureau reported advanced retail sales came in at $403 billion. We haven't seen numbers that low since Obama. That's down 16.4%, which is plus or minus, that's the margin, 5% monthly. They are down year over year, 21.6%. That is worse than economists had expected because a lot of people I keep hearing this crap. Oh, that was expected. A lot of these numbers, if you watch the show, they're worse than expected. They are. And it's signaling that we're not going to get this quick, this quick snapback that a lot of, I don't know what to call them, apologists, look, like I said, I'm optimistic too, and we will come back. We will come back much faster under Donald Trump than Joe Biden. That's a fact. That is a fact. But it's going to take longer than people thought. That's my position. I hope America proves me wrong. But in the last 6 weeks, what did you say it was again, Maddie? 60-something days since this started, more than 8 weeks ago now. Who's just past this prologue, folks, past this prologue. Who's been right, who's been wrong? Forecast ranged from a low of 16.9, negative 16.9, to a high of -7. The consensus was negative 11.2. So we were significantly worse than the consensus. Total sales for February 20 through April 20 declined 7.7 from the same period a year ago. And the February 2020 to March 2020 percentage change was revised from -8.4 to -8.3. So March was 1/10 of a percentage point better than initially reported in the advanced. At least that's some good news, right? At least that's some good news. Hey, we'll take it any way we can get it. All right, let's go right on because I got this other stuff I want to talk to you about, but I want to get Burr out of the way. Let's get Richard Burr here. My buddy Richard Burr. Those of you know, I'm moving to North Carolina. Did not like Richard Burr at all. Matt Gaetz, who is a congressman down here, he was one of the very few people who said Richard Burr should be removed from the intelligence community if Republicans want to be able to claim that they are the anti-swamp party after the economy dust settles with the economy. What will remain for Republicans, and Trump specifically, is the cleaning the swamp thing. All right? This guy is the epitome of the swamp. He really is. We have a big problem in this country with our intelligence committees. Anyone who conducts oversight, they have completely abdicated their duty to actually conduct oversight over the intelligence communities. So when you get in bed with the people you're supposed to be policing, there's real problems. And we have Richard Burr here. He's stepping down, but not because of anything he did wrong during the Russia probe investigation him and Mark Warner were supposed to be conducting. Liberals went nuts yesterday because they feel like the Justice Department is get this. They feel like the Justice Department is targeting Richard Burr more than others because him and Warner were going to release a report on Russia meddling, and that it was somehow going to give them that nugget that they've been waiting for 3 years. And they feel like the FBI and the Justice Department are giving extra scrutiny to Burr as punishment, as a way to kind of politicize the FBI. The case against Burr was always stronger. When this story first broke, I told everybody it is very easy to make it seem like lawmakers are engaged in insider trading, especially if you don't know how these things work. They go in a blind. You don't talk to your broker, or at least theoretically, you are not supposed to. But with Richard Burr, this case was always, it was difficult to swallow. All right, let's just read the story. He's stepping down. Not permanently, by the way. They said this was a temporary thing. We'll see how the investigation goes. He was pressured to step down before. He didn't. He waited till the FBI, proverbially kicked down his door and seized his cell phone. And now that was just too much to ignore. So he stepped down. So amid the insider trading investigation, he came under fire for stock sales shortly before markets crashed earlier this year. On February 13th, he and his wife sold off shares of companies worth $1.7 million over a large number of trades. Those shares were worth at least $250,000 less at the close of the trading day on March 19th. Those sell-offs, folks, came before the collapse of the markets that we saw in March because of the coronavirus. He had received a secret briefing about the pandemic. Publicly, he told Americans that the economy was fundamentally sound. And privately, he was caught on audio saying the pandemic could be akin to the 1918 Spanish influenza. So the Justice Department announced in March that it would be investigating him and the allegations, along with Feinstein. She answered some questions about her husband's trades as well. And Kelly Loeffler, people were saying, she was left alone. You don't know that. You don't know what happened with Kelly Loeffler. We just don't know yet. So that's not true. We don't know yet. If the time comes where it looks like there was a case to be made against her and it wasn't, I'll smack them too. But right now, people are just making stuff up. On Wednesday, the FBI seized Burr's cell phone while they were serving a warrant at his D.C. residence. All right, which a lot of these guys, they don't spend much time home, right? Senator Burr contacted me this morning to inform me of his decision to step aside as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee during the pendency of the investigation. Senator McConnell said in a statement, "We agreed that this decision would be in the best interest of the committee and will be effective at the end of the day tomorrow," which is today. Under Senator Burr's chairmanship, the Intelligence Committee undertook what the media framed, big media and DC politicos framed, as the serious investigation into Russian interference in 2016. That was always meant to be derogatory toward Devin Nunes and the House. They conducted a much more skeptical investigation. Warner and Burr wanted to find something. Even when they didn't, they wanted to paint it as if they found something. And basically the comparison aimed to downplay the findings everybody knew was coming from Nunes, which did not find collusion because it never existed. And yet we have these people yesterday stooping as low, Trump critics, I guess it's TDS, I guess it is, stooping as low to defend somebody like Richard Burr and insider trading on the whimsical hope that he would come out with a report with some kind of evidence of collusion. They didn't get it from Robert Mueller. They didn't get it from John Brennan. They didn't get it from James Clapper. They didn't even get it from Republicans who agree with Richard Burr, like the former DNI, Dan Coates, his buddy, who was also on the Intelligence Committee before Richard Burr became the chairman. Those two were, BFFs. They're intel friendly. They didn't get it from any of that. They didn't get it from the FBI. They didn't get it from the Justice Department. They didn't get it from Bruce Orr. They didn't get it from the CIA. They didn't get it from the fake 17 intelligence agency report. But yet they feel like somewhere there's hope that Richard Burr and Mark Warner were going to come out with this. So they strip aside all integrity they may or may not have left, and they stoop as low as to defend Richard Burr against Donald Trump. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, ultimately, they did conclude that there was no evidence to support the allegations of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. The same conclusion that was reached anyway by Devin Nunes in the House Intelligence Committee a year earlier. And by the way, the transcripts that we've been showing you all week long have come from the interviews conducted by the House Intelligence Community when Chairman Nunes was leading that committee. And then for a period there, There was that smear campaign with that ethics charge allegation, which was nothing and turned out to be nothing. And he wound up taking the committee back. But for a while, he had to step down temporarily. That is where those depositions, those transcripts of the depositions that I've been reading over the last week, that came from their committee, not this one, not the Senate one. And there's something else about those I'm going to get into in a second. But this serious investigation had James A. Wolf. He's been there for a long time, James Wolf. He is a longtime director of security for that committee, or was. He wound up getting off with a slap on the wrist, but he was leaking classified information to a girl for you-know-what reasons. That was a reporter. He wound up getting basically nothing for it. He pled out to making false statements to federal agents. He did not get the Michael Flynn treatment. You guys can read that story on PPD as well. It's linked right here. You can click on it. But he selectively leaked classified information to the New York Times in a manner that was designed to politically damage President Trump. It wasn't that it supported the entire narrative. When you take little bits and pieces of stuff, you can make it look like the narrative fits. And that's what he was doing. The plea deal allowed him to avoid more serious charges involving the leaks. So he got lying to federal agents. He did not get leaking classified information. So who is the runner-up for this committee? That's Jim Risch of Idaho. Right now, he's the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He'd have to step down in order to lead the Intelligence Committee, and we couldn't reach him for a comment yesterday, so I'm not sure where that's going to go. But that is who would lead. Is he more? I know what the question is going to be. Is he more pro-Trump? I don't know. You know, I mean, look, I'll tell you, this is what burned me with Senator Burr. This is the first thing that burns me with Senator Burr. Forget about, Intelligence Committee stuff. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit old school here, but a man is only as good as his word. All right? He's only as good as, I don't really care what the disagreements with Trump were about, but the deal he struck with Don Jr. was that Don Jr. would come in and he would sit down and he'd answer every single question that they had. As long as it took, he would sit there and answer any questions they had. Unfortunately, I'm just coming one time, Don Jr. said, which was smart because look at how many people they tried to entrap, tried to put into a textbook perjury trap. That's what Roger Stone got charged with. You may come in, you may give 8 hours, and I think in total, Don Jr., between all committees, gave something like 16 hours of testimony. And he told Burr, I'll come in, I'll answer every question you got. Same thing with the House. But I'm only doing it one time because you're not going to pull some crap with me. Because they could say, well, you said on Thursday you met with so-and-so. Now you're telling us it was a Tuesday. Which time did you lie under oath? And so, it doesn't behoove you if you're on, a subject or, or a subject or a target of an investigation. You sit down with your lawyer one time, you got nothing to hide, you answer all the questions, and that's it. You do not repeatedly put yourself in the line of fire like Michael Flynn did. He thought that maybe those people would be the good guys, and that did not happen. Right? So anyway, we'll get back to more of the Russia stuff in a little bit, but let me do my little spiel. And then when we're done with the little spiel, we're going to take a look at the Census Bureau data, because this is between this and the retail sales numbers, I got put in a little bit of a funky mood, but it is Freewheeling Friday. So let's try to get this out of the way. And then when we come back, we'll go over those numbers. I'm going to just basically do what I just did before. I have some graphics I wanted to upload, but they're not interactive like that. So I'm just going to use the Census Bureaus, and they're really neat. They're really cool. I got to give them. They use high charts, same people we use to bring you our maps when we're doing our projection models. You click on the state, and the little chart comes up, little needle wags back and forth on which likely rating it is. By the way, we just don't have the resources the New York Times has, but we had the needle, which we called the gauge, long before the New York Times ever did. They just upped it because they have more money and it looks incredible. So I have to give it to them. But the Census Bureau is starting to catch up with modern times too. And they always have this ton of data that is never really visualized as much as it could be. And they started to use high charts and connect the charts together. So when you want to look at one variable and it changes, it'll change the map, it'll change the graph, it'll change the pie, whatever you're looking at. So they're moving into the modern era. It's cool. Anyway, it's 10:35, guys, on Freewheeling Friday. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You can follow me on Twitter at Peoples_Pundit right there. If you guys, we had a huge surge this week. Must have been the California election. I should talk about elections every day. We had a huge surge this week in subscriber counts. So, don't forget, if you haven't, to subscribe on Twitter. If you are watching this show later and you're hearing me say it, hit that subscribe button. And then also you hit the bell to get notified when we go live. People who are watching on Facebook Live, like the page People's Pundit Daily, because then it will let you know 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, before we go on. You don't have to try to race on it. Scopers, I have tried to send this YouTube link. They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to lose Periscope. They want you to stick on Periscope, even if the the video quality is not as good. So, all I can tell you is I suggest you guys go to People's Pundit Daily on YouTube because it's just so much better on it. All right, it is 10:30, so let's speed this up. Ultimately, the best way to support the show is to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily, which you can do by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. Can we get that link out there for them? Periscope may kick it back. Others may not. It's going to get blasted out to everybody right now. All right. Give me a second. Let's get the Census Bureau data. Okay. Again, really cool stuff. Doesn't show good stuff, but it's neat. It really is. So let's try to pull this up right now. Pulse data. Yeah, it's called the Small Business Pulse Data. And it's new. I mean, this is brandy spanking new. It's going to constantly run. So we're going to be able to, bring you updates with it. We were trying to put this up on PPD because there's a story that we're going to do about it, about different areas of the country. A lot of times we try to see the silver lining when Tim and I are talking about economic data. Until now, all we had was the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Small Business Optimism Survey. Here we have a much bigger survey, and it's going to run constantly. It will update constantly. So we'll know region by region, state by state, who is having a worse time, who is having a better time, and whether or not, and we're going to do this, whether or not those states reopening, making efforts to, ease some of these restrictions are really having much of an impact or not. So anyway, survey questions are here. Check this out. This is really cool. Survey questions are here. Survey answers are here. This is very much like a dashboard that if you have ever gotten a big data poll from us before, this is how clients get it. So they have a selector box to filter what questions we ask people. And then they, have another variable. One is usually the column of like a crosstab and the other one is a row, right? So you could say, here's the question and whether or not it's male or female. They are coming into the 21st century here. This is the very first question. Overall, how has this business been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? This has been collected up to May 2nd. It will update soon. The question is the overall impact, what I just read to you, and the answer is large negative impact. This is the result of people who said a large negative impact. Here is the map. You can see obviously New York is at 62.2%, nearly 11% higher than the national average, which is 51.4. You can see that right here, 51.4. These are actually services and sectors right here. We've been talking a lot about oil and gas. Look at what quarrying, oil and gas, they're about 5 points higher than the national average, 5.5. This big column over here, that's accommodation and food services. Maybe kind of like leisure too. All right, you should think of that. Accommodation, leisure and hospitality, and then food services. This is negative. So despite the gains we saw, people think grocery stores are supposed to carry this recovery or keep us from going into a recession. That was really ridiculous. It always was. 83.5% of accommodation and food service small businesses, think restaurants, say that there was a negative impact. The second largest, arts, entertainment, and recreation, and the third largest, education. What a shame if you're a show watcher, considering we've gone over the results of serology testing with children. What a shame, right? And then the fourth is healthcare and social assistance. I'm not going to go beyond that. I wanted to show this because I don't know if you've talked to, maybe you have people in your lives. I do. And maybe they're a professional with elective surgeries or something, whatever it may be. Something that got sidelined as a non-essential service. Hospitals don't make money off of the ER or treating sniffles. They make money off of stuff like that. And they've been negatively, a small business been negative. So think maybe, small, your Main Street doctor. All right. Think like that. Even people who provide supplies, they've been negatively impacted. So that's large negative. Moderate is the national average is 38.5%. You just put those two categories together and you're nearly at 90%. So 90% roughly of small businesses said they had a negative impact. Okay. And with 51.3 or whatever it was being large negative, 38.5 being moderate negative. Little to none, 7.6. It's abysmal. That's abysmal. Moderately positive, 1.7. 1.7% of small businesses in this survey said they had a moderately positive impact. The other positive up, large positive, less than 1%. Less than 1. So about 2%. So while everyone's trying to find the silver lining here, we interviewed for People's Pundit Daily. We interviewed basically like a nutrascience company, and they have a lot of products with CBD. They reform their supply chains. They revamp them to be able to do products for sanitizers and other things that were in short supply. I would say they definitely had a positive impact on their business. They sell, by the way, Eddie's Clean Hands sanitizer. If you read that story on PPD, they are in a less than 3% category. 0.8 said large positive, 1.7. So we're looking at about 2.5. That's it, folks. That's all. So while, you Fox News, the rest of them pretty much, I'm reading some of your comments. They're heartbreaking. So I'm not trying to be Johnny Raincloud here again, but this was avoidable. This was absolutely avoidable. All to simply move now to that middle ground because we're being forced to do so. All to simply move to that middle ground that we all should have just been moved to anyway. Was it absolutely necessary to commit economic suicide? Was it? Or are we just now just kind of putting things off anyway, right? I want to show you too. This one is, I got a hat tip fox on this one. That's hat tip fox. I'm going to pull up because you said, well, things are getting better now. I don't know about you guys. Let me know in the comments. I definitely see more people on the road. Thank God my dry cleaner and my barber, they're back open for business on a limited basis. You can't just go in there packing and wait. You have to make an appointment. You have to wear a mask. Otherwise, you're not going to get your hair cut. At the dry cleaner, it's one person at a time in the lobby at a time. So it's on a limited basis. There's definitely more people out there, but we're not exactly, back to normal here. This is what the country looks like when we're talking about reopening and not reopening. I said before, DC was the most restrictive place in the country. There it is. So here's the reopening timeline. DC alone is still to the point of almost bare restriction. You have, Virginia, Oregon, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Maryland. Those are on a limited, and the rest of the country is pretty much partially opening at this point. But no end in sight. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where I see, Joyce, I see your comment. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you mind telling us where you are, but the bottom line is it's going to feel like that there's no end in sight anyway. It almost doesn't matter in California. Yeah. It almost doesn't matter what they, of course it does matter what they do. I don't mean to put it like that. But for so many people and so many industries, when you're in the rears this bad, it's very difficult to play catch up. A $1,200 check for an individual, much bigger than the Obama stimulus program. I'm not trying to knock, the efforts the president and the administration made to keep people afloat here. But the idea it was ever going to be good enough was a little bit silly, right? I mean, let's be real. It was a little bit silly. $1,200 for an individual. What did they get? $2,400 for couples, and then $500 for each additional kid if they were married couples. I think the most you could get was $3,900 maybe. When you're in the rears 2 months, folks, how much can anyone expect government to be able to do to keep people afloat during these times? I mean, let's be realistic, right? And I thought maybe at some point things would start to come around. Unfortunately, what's happening here is that the numbers are going to pressure people to move, even though they don't really want to move. And that is unfortunate. What we should be doing is, of course, what the numbers suggest we should be doing. But they're not listening to those numbers. They're not. Again, here's Florida. When those are going to be updated today, by the way. Just got a heads up from the Florida Department of Health. Those are going to be updated today. I have the new numbers for positivity rates across the entire state. There's just, little to no movement. Those are for 64 out of 67 counties. All right. And let's pull that up. Here is the entire state. So you have Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade that did not reopen with the rest of the state. This is as of yesterday, the new positivity rates as of 11:59. I mean, this includes the 3 counties that aren't in phase 1. And there was a dip again the day from the prior. So sometimes we tick up, sometimes we dive down a little bit. But if you take out those 3 counties that aren't in phase 1 yet, the numbers are lower. The numbers are actually lower. You have the 3 counties that are not involved in the reopening, pushing those numbers higher. Again, 4.77, or let's go just to the day that we have as the latest, basically, which is the 12th, I believe. Look at the 12th. Just compare the numbers. The 12th was 5.24, and the 12th there was about 1, I think it was 1.88 or something. 1.88. And the day before was 1.43. They're actually making it worse. They're actually exacerbating it. So what is the argument? What is it? Because it's not coming here. So what on earth is Mr. $285,000 a year salary Rick Bright talking about? What is he talking about? Everyone just goes up to the microphone and says, well, but we can't, I'm warning of dire consequences, Nostradamus like Armageddon, end of day, book of Revelations type crap if we reopen. And the science tells us that. What science? What data? You're not allowed to just say the word science, the word data. You have to show some empirical evidence to back yourself up. You can't just use the words and expect that to be good enough. Not with 35 million people out of work, it's not. Not with 35 million people. Not with insured unemployment rates at 15, 16%. That's not good enough anymore. Don't let them make that. Don't let them escape from having to defend this argument. This was never done in the history of the world before. Never. Right. Governor Gruesome, somebody said. I mean, what he's a perfect example. What the hell is he talking about when he says science, or he says the data, or he says the evidence? What evidence? I have evidence. I've been showing it to everybody. Where is your evidence? Fauci wasn't, Dr. Fauci this week was not required at all, not by our senators and not by our media, to support his argument with any empirical evidence. That's nuts. That is absolutely crazy. He went up there, he warned of unnecessary suffering and death. He gets really hyperbolic when he wants to, right? He calls 35 million Americans out of work economically inconvenient. The fight for their very financial survival is economically inconvenient. But when he wants to paint something the way he wants it to be painted, he knows how to find the words to invoke emotion with that, to make his point. What he doesn't know how to do is support it with actual evidence. And at this point, when we're looking at numbers this bad, look at that chart and actually bring up the negative again. Large negative. When we're looking at numbers like this, do I have to zoom in to show everybody good enough my point here? Zoom in a little bit to show. When we're looking at numbers this badly, if Donald Trump wants to win this election, he's going to have to get on the other side of these people. In 2016, he ran against these experts, these entitled experts, and these whiny whistleblowers and bureaucrats. He ran against them. He's going to have to get on the other side of this, because coming out and saying, if I didn't do anything, 2.5 million people would have died is baloney. And worse, he knows it's baloney. And even worse than that, his voters know it's baloney. That is simply not true. It was never true. It was supported, the entire argument was supported by models that were started with insufficient, inaccurate, or just flat out missing data. They never had enough data to put together these models. They scared the hell out of him with the empirical college study. He should just say it. Look, they came up to me and they said, Mr. President, if you don't lock this thing down, if we don't do this now, millions of people are going to die. And by the way, they're your voters. They're older voters. I mean, if you don't do it, you're basically killing your own people, Mr. President. And then when that, flunked out, they moved to the great and powerful Oz, Dr. Murray, the fraud at IHME. He should, at some point, sooner is better than later, just come out with the mea culpa. Just come out and do it, Mr. President. Just do it. You know that's a lie. I know it's a lie. Your voters know it's a lie. 2.5 million people were never going to die. Why? How do we know that? Serology testing. That Fauci and people like Dr. Murray don't want us to listen to. They're not real. The testing's not real. I mean, it's just a nonsense. Just professional smearing because they don't like what it has to say. I will give credit to Dr. Birx. Dr. Deborah Birx, I mean, she takes a look at it and she says, you know what? I think it's pretty clear there were far more asymptomatic people than we thought. There were more infected people than we thought. And sorry, that's it. At least she has the honesty to come up to admit it. And also, too, this idea that America is number one in the nation for number one in the world for deaths and cases. That's just flat out ludicrous. Flatly wrong. So, I mean, I really should have gotten the definition of per capita and put it up. It's not really hard to do. It's not. It's the number, the variable that you are trying to measure divided by total population. So cases, if you're doing cases or tests, divided by total population. That's what it is. And actually, let's see. I want to bring up that. Can we bring up that the testing, the U.S. testing per graph? We got that. We did that. We covered it on PBD. The day that the United States doubled South Korea per capita in testing. South Korea was the gold standard. According to the media, it was the gold standard. If you test more, you will find more cases. That's obvious. That's number one, why that argument doesn't make any sense. And number two, per capita, the last time we did it, it did bump up. The first time we did it, the US was number 7 for cases, just flat out cases. The second time we did it, they were number 5, but it really wasn't. The United States was number 5. We were number 5. But there have been other, Italy, even Spain was bad. There were other smaller population countries that per capita not only had more positive tests, but their deaths were worse and their death rates were worse. And, this is the chart from World Data. I think, right? World in Data. Got to give people credit. Got to hat tip them where hat tips do. We're going to do our own, but they're updating this every day. So we might as well just use theirs. What's his name? Admiral. I don't want to butcher your name, Admiral. Where are you? You're down here somewhere. Greer, right? He said earlier in the week that by tonight, the U.S. will surpass 9 million tests conducted. And in fact, it did. So he was telling the truth. We're coming up on the heels of 10 million now. That's May 12th. We're now May 15th. So you can rest assured we'll be well beyond that. If you just look at the COVID tracking, tests that were performed, the number of positive, the number of negative, we are now well over. There we are. Look, we're coming up on 10 million. That's the 13th. We are 30,000 away from 10 million. The more you test, the more positive results you're going to get. All right, look, we're going to do a little spiel. I'm going to take a hot minute here, and we'll come back. Look, the point I'm trying to make here, folks, again, is that it's not to be Johnny Raincloud. It's just the numbers are coming in. They're worse than even some of us who knew the numbers were going to be ugly. We told you the numbers were going to be ugly. They're worse than some of us even expected. One of the worst forecasts out there was from Goldman. And Goldman now is looking at not negative 25 GDP for the second quarter, but negative 30 and change. And the third quarter was going to be positive 19. It's going to be positive 20, some 22, 23. So it's looking that third quarter is looking better. It's just on net because they revised the second quarter down so much more. On net, it's still worse than we thought. So the idea that there's going to be this big bounce back and big recovery is being challenged now, and people have to know this. So while we're being told about the waves that can come back, in the fall, well, yeah, conveniently, right by the election, right at the election, it'll conveniently circle back around. While we're being told that, then we're not being told that the negative economic impact from this is far worse than people thought. And maybe the bounce back is going to take a little bit longer. So in the end, I think there needs to be some balance. I think we made some decisions that are not historically supported when we didn't have enough data. And because people don't like to admit they were wrong, it's going to take time for this other information to become the conversation. But it will. It will become the conversation. So for Trump supporters out there on Twitter citing polls right now, what will the poll say a month or two from now? We've already seen public opinion shift dramatically in some of these states. Wait until they find out. Wait until they hear the percentage of the deaths that came from nursing homes and long-term care because of the lockdown. Wait until they hear that. And who do you think they're going to blame? I understand, and we've been through this a million times on Twitter, on the show, on everywhere. The buck always stops with the top. He's going to have to position himself against these people. He's going to have to do that. It always stops at the top. They're going to look around and they're going to want somebody to blame. It will happen. That time will come after TARP, after 9/11, all moments of crisis. You have this blind rally, and then the dust settles and people start conducting an autopsy on what the hell happened. We're still now dealing with the FISA abuse that came from the expanded powers that came along with the Patriot Act after 9/11. Everybody was willing to give up those civil liberties because they just knocked 2 towers down. They crashed a plane into the Pentagon. Oh my God, you don't support this? What's wrong with you? Do you want 3,500 people more to die? What's wrong with you? Sounds familiar. That's what always happened. That's why they return to the crisis all the time, because it works. Let me go through my spiel. I'm going to take a 30-second interlude. I'll be right back. All right. But before I do, I'm going to do my spiel. It is now 11:01. It just turned 11:01 on Friday, May 15th. And you are watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me on Twitter. I'm going to get this right one day at Peoples_Pundit. And you guys, if you are watching on YouTube, do not forget to subscribe. For those of you who have done it, we love you for it. You've done a great job. We are having a nice little swell. Make sure you do before you leave. On Facebook, don't forget to like the page, People's Pundit Daily. If you turn on those little notification bells on YouTube, and if you like the page on Facebook, it will notify you what time we're going to go live, when. It'll give you a heads up. This way you don't have to scramble to get here in order to do it. All right. Hey, I see those things in the comments. Good. Thanks. Yeah. Keep it up, guys. You're doing a great job. We love you for it. And then, of course, ultimately, the best way to support the show is to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily. That's how we bring you the show. That's how we bring you the charts. That's how we bring you the voter files and everything. It's Freewheeling Friday. So on my 30-second little interlude here, ask questions. That's a great question. I got one even before I left out here. That's a great question. We'll talk about vaccines every year. Every year we poll. Somebody has us poll vaccines, like how many vaccines, how many people are going to get vaccines, polling just flat American adults. I'll tell you what we found in the past before. Maybe I can even pull one up. And then I'll show you how many people actually got vaccines those years. It's not much. I can actually pull. I mean, that kind of stuff I know off the top of my head, but it'd be pretty cool to look at. And then where are we going with these vaccines? But I will be back in a hot minute. All right. So don't go anywhere. Ask your questions. It's Freewheeling Friday. What you want to talk about, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. Somebody did ask me to open up the voter file in California 25. I did promise them I'd do that. So we have a little bit less than an hour. We got plenty of time to do it. Ask your questions. I'm going to go pull that up, and I'll be back in a hot minute, folks. Sit tight. All the best.
Sorry, I can hear it. You guys can't. But next time, next week, you will. We're going to have some cool commercials and stuff because, I'm like, well, they're always funny with copyrights and music, right? I need some kind of, we need some intro. We need some commercials. We need some entertainment throughout the show, right? During intermission, 30 seconds. Do you really want to just see a blank screen? No, you want to see something. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do about, well, who do I want to contact, ask if I could do music? And then I thought to myself, the People's Pundit. There's plenty of people out there who play good music that want to get their music out. So if you know somebody, because we got great bands, we know great people who really, they bust their humps. And they could stand to get some attention. They play great music. So we're going to do them. We'll showcase them. We'll let you know who they are, where you can get their stuff. And I'm just doing that for now. I mean, just look, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. I get some cool intro, outro music, some interludes, and they get some exposure. If you know anybody like that, then you can go ahead and contact the show. You can send an email to contact@peoplespunditdaily, and it will send you directly to me or Laura at some point, and we will decide whether or not, say, hey, this band, check it out, listen to this track, tell us who it is. If we put it up, make sure, of course, you got, if it's you, then we have your permission. If not, you can put us in contact with who it is. And we will absolutely do our best to showcase people who have talent, who don't get it. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. The music industry is a lot like the political space. It doesn't really, or even what I do. If you don't have friends on the inside, man, then you're not going to get the attention you may otherwise deserve. So we're going to do that. Okay, so we're back here. It's 11:07. I got some great stuff on that little 30 seconds. You guys pretty fast typers. But before I do that, I'm going to pull up California 25. Somebody said, well, look, what was the turnout like? What's the district look like? This district is more democratic than some of the other districts that were flipped in 2018 in California, around Orange County. And, those areas with Rohrabacher and others, Darrell Ice's old district. These are, they're interesting areas. But this one right here, there are a lot of voters on the voter roll. There are a lot of them. But we don't see turnout that even matches near the rolls. So, sometimes you'll hear me say dirty rolls. The voter rolls are dirty. California has very dirty voter rolls. There are a lot of people on the roll still that technically, they could vote if somebody filled in a provisional ballot for them or a mail-in ballot or harvested a ballot, but they should not vote. All right, so let's take a look at California 25 to show you what Mike Garcia did. All right, 364, almost 365,000 individuals, right? If I wanted to run that down a little bit, because I want people I can match to a landline, or I can match to a mobile number or an email address. It tells me they're more solid records. We can run that down. We can drill that down now. This way, when I run the analysis too, you'll be able to see, the difference. Well, how many have mobile phones listed? How many have email listed? And then when I pull that, because I want to run a poll, or I want to run the model, or I want to run the voter propensity score, whatever it may be, I can tell who has a cleaner record and who doesn't. Cleaner meaning it's just a name on here and an address, but they don't have if they don't have a mobile number, an email, a contact information of some sort, then may raise a couple flags, right? And then I can also show you too, I can get rid of deceased and change of address. Those people should not be on here. As you can see, this is still listed as Catherine Hill's district. It will change to Mike Garcia at the end of the month. The voter rolls are updated monthly. Ours, some of them bi-weekly actually, but this is monthly. State of California has over 20 million. This one had 365,000, this district. You'll notice when I included mobile numbers, it was about 142,000. That's about the 70, that's close to that 70 to 76 reporting number that we got initially on Tuesday and then into Wednesday.
161,000, a little bit more, had email records associated with their voter lines. And then the landlines, 110. It's a dying process, folks. It really is. When I'm polling a Republican primary or something, landlines are much more accurate. There are people, though, that you will miss if you just poll with the mobile record. You will miss more conservative voters. You will. This is a solid enough record, 161,000 plus with emails, that you could build a panel in this district. So I could pull the email records. And what do I mean by building a panel? It means I want to poll California 25, but I need to make sure that I have an online component. I could go to one of my vendors. I could go to one of my partners, and I can say Dynata or Sint, whoever I want to use. How many respondents do you have in California's 25th district? Is it feasible for me to collect 400 responses in that district? Or I could just do what we did in 2016, which is look at how many people have email records associated on their voter file. Pull them all. Send out mass email blasts and say, hi, this is Big Data Poll. We're conducting polling for the 2016, 2020, whichever, election cycle. Your participation would be voluntary, but it is highly appreciated and critical to understanding public opinion this election cycle. Are you interested in participating in our panel? They click on it or they don't, it goes into spam. This is a large enough sample where I know I'll get several hundreds to sign up. This is a solid district. They will. And again, we've talked about this before, totally different episodes, so I don't want to get into it too much. But the way you incentivize people to take panel polls will dictate the respondents that you fill up that panel with. If you tell them, every survey you take, I'll give you $1 or $3 toward a gift card. When it fills up to $20, you can, have it paid out and choose from Kohl's, Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, whatever it may be, which some people do. This is how some people do this. The more surveys you take, the more points you'll get. Points transfer into money. And then eventually you can go out and buy that CD you wanted, or, a girl can go buy a dress she wanted. A guy can go get a set of headphones, and you'll end up with a panel of kids who don't go vote. So we don't do that. When we do incentivize people, we usually give a list from the left to the right of charities, which is something SurveyMonkey also does. We very much liked their model. And maybe they can give to the Sierra Club, or they can give to, if you're on the right, really shouldn't be, but Samaritan's Purse. A lot, somebody would pick something like Samaritan's Purse, which we just added to a list. And then, or, maybe they give to, who knows, folks, there's a vast majority, Shriners, St. Jude's Hospital, because that promotes civic obligation, civic responsibility. We want people who are more likely to vote. And we want to know that they're likely voters. We have simply found that those people who feel a civic obligation or a duty to take a survey, maybe they can't give to charity themselves, but they can take 3 to 5 minutes to fill out an online questionnaire to earn a couple bucks to give to their charity. Over the course of 4 weeks, monthly payouts, 30-day rolling payouts, they can give to a charity a few dollars that they may not otherwise have been able to afford to give. Those people are much more likely to actually vote. So you won't get the YouGov kind of numbers they got in 2016, because you're not going for a Kohl's gift card to go get the red polka dot dress you saw that you couldn't afford. You're doing it for civic duty and obligation. And so that was just a word on that. But this is a big enough district here where I could pull a panel poll out of California 20. I could build my own panel in California 25. Some of them are so small, it just can't be done. It just can't be done. Maybe you can get 50 or 150. So then you have at least an online component to poll with that makes up a greater mixed mode survey. Maybe you called 300 people on their landlines. Maybe you called 450 or 500 on their cell phones. You put together a couple hundred responses in the panel poll, and there's something you can derive from that. And you have a nice mixed mode survey. You used a lot of data collection modes to reach out to a lot of different people because, again, what's our motto? Everybody takes different survey at different rates depending on the mode of collection. Conservatives are going to take a lot more online and landline. Liberals are getting more panel savvy. They are. Since 2016, they are getting more panel savvy. But women, specifically metro, urban, liberal women, are much more likely to pick up their cell phone and talk to me than a man is, with more conservative views or not. Liberal men are more likely to pick up their cell phone and talk to a pollster than conservative men. That's absolutely true. And women are always more likely to talk to a pollster than men, period. That is just true. Women are about 52.5% in a raw census weight. It is not uncommon when you collect raw data, which is why we collect large samples. We're a big believer in large samples. It is not uncommon for women to be 55 to 65% of raw data. That's not good enough. That means you're going to miss some men. So you better collect a lot more so you get a representative sample. Anyway, here's California 25. Nothing here other than excluding deceased and people who have a change of address flag, meaning they recently moved and they should not be voting in the district. Let's run it. Party code, gender, household income, marital status, ethnicity, education, and religion. Let's refresh it. And somebody asked me to do this earlier, and I said, I'll do it free will on Friday, but I won't take up the rest of the hour with it. If you guys, I know some questions about Russia and Flynn and other stuff. You ask the questions, I'll get to them. All right, so Democrat, dun, 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 about 37%, which you would consider a little bit weird, how they return the ballots, right? When you look at the early voting in this district, you will almost, well, I don't want to say never. Never say never, folks. Never say never. Republicans are 32%. Democrats are 37%. Going into the election the other day, let me look at the most. When 29% were returned, ballots sent, the percentage of them returned were at 29%. Republicans were 40% of those ballots. Democrats were only 27% of those ballots. And independents or none were 20. You'll notice here they're 26. And I made a big deal about these people, folks, because typically Democrats will carry these voters 55% or more in this district and in a lot of those districts out there. That didn't happen this time. And it was extremely, what's the word I'm looking for? Latinos were like 20%. Asians made up almost 30%. It's not a demographically it's not a Republican friendly demographic. They just did much better with these voters, or not they, Mike Garcia just did better with these voters than Republicans have traditionally done in the past. All right. And you can see, let's go down to race real quick one more time. I know people, and here we go. See, this is much more accurate. About 52.5% female. Just like I said before, this district very much reflects census when it comes to gender. All right. But let's go down here and look at ethnicity. Asians, a lot of them will be in this unknown category. We've talked about this before. People hold this stuff very tight to their vest. This right here is 51%, but in the electorate, it's not. And in the overall, honestly, when we see the electorate overall, it's more like a white plurality district. I absolutely believe that there's going to be some not Caucasian Hispanic and then Caucasian not Hispanic. There are, in this Caucasian category right here, there are absolutely Hispanics in there that should not be in there. All right. And that happens a lot. All right. And you have 20% almost unknown. That's a lot of, there are a lot of Asians in those unknowns that should be here in the Asian category. But people hold that and religion very tight to the glove. Let's do a voter propensity score and you'll see what it looks like. All right. So what do you want to do? Let's do 50 for a general election and make it more liberal. All right. Because in a primary or in an outside election, it will be more Republican. It was slightly more Republican than a traditional electorate on Tuesday. That's true. We don't know because we'll get the full ballots when we know when California stops voting at the end of the month. We'll get a much better idea, like a third world country. But for right now, that's what we're looking at. It will get more liberal as those ballots come in because those provisionals typically lean very heavily toward the Democrat. Although I will say this, like I told you on Tuesday and Wednesday and even yesterday, Garcia won some of those suburbs that he should not have won, or at least not that he should not have, that Republicans have not won. And he did very well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't lean as heavily as they have in the past. I mean, that he just did incredible. There's just no other way to put it. All right, so let's update this. Let's run it again, and then we'll move on to other questions. I just want to show you guys one more thing. This, and then I'm going to take this deceased off, and I want to show you something. All right, so run the count. This will lower it. There we're at now 175. That's much closer to an actual electorate in this district, okay? Refresh it, keep the same party code and everything else, all the variables that we usually keep. Any minute now. Here we go. All right. So Democrats, they're still at 37 1/3, but Republicans ticked up to 36. Now it's darn near an even race with almost 22% of independents, nones. And this is why Democrats have been able to eke out this district. Republicans will vote in a little bit higher rate, but in the end, if 55% break to the Democrat in this category, it gives them that single digit lead that we've seen in the past in this district. If they break a little heavier, you'll get a Katie Hill at 9 points. If they break a little lighter, you'll get a Hillary Clinton at 6. And then sometimes in these congressional races, it's been so close. But in the end, Democrats squeak it out a little bit. That's why. This time with Mike Garcia, that didn't happen. Like I said, I saw some of those Los Angeles districts look like he carried them. He carried this group with like 52%, which is, it's something, it's meaningful. So while you hear these people try to cast it aside, don't let them do it because it's not true. It's not true. It matters. Was it a little bit more older of an electorate? Yes, but it was very demographically diverse. And in independents, I would have still have expected them to go maybe not 55, 60, like we've seen in the past, but, 53, 52% for Christy Smith. That did not happen. All right. Yes, provisional ballots in California absolutely lean Democrat. Oh, yeah, I killed that. One more thing. Let me just show you one more thing, and then I'll get to the Russia questions. Here's the problem with provisionals. Let's take off the voter propensity score. And let's take off deceased and change your flag. Oh, it won't even let me. So at some point, yeah, see, it won't let. I really wanted to show you what happens. It can do it probably statewide. It may be that it's, not that much. So they figure, they're not going to do it. But statewide, let's see if it'll let me exclude it here. Exclude deceased. Oh, there it is now. Oh, right. So it did. It went up to 402 as opposed to 386. All right. So there you go. That's a lot. It's wondering where 20,000 ballots could come from. I mean, they can't fill in every single one of them, but there are ballots out there to be able to overtake a 3,000 vote lead, a 5,000 vote lead. Well, there you go. That was about 15,000 and change, 17 if it's 402. It was 384. So yeah, about just a little bit under 20,000. It's a lot of votes. It's a lot of votes. All right, so let me get into some of the questions here because it is 11:23. Fridays are always going to be tough for me, folks. Friday is we call it picture day in my house. So we have this house being built in New Bern, North Carolina. Been waiting forever, and we're getting very close, or it seems like it's been forever. It really hasn't. They're doing a fantastic job, but it always does seem like forever, right? We're getting very close, and Friday is picture day when I talk and we all meet with the builder and everybody gets pictures and we get to see how cool it is. So that always backs right up against the show. So that's why you always see me try to take everybody, get everybody out as quick as possible. Is everybody having issues here with the feed? I don't know. I don't know, Kevin. But Yeah, I guess let me go back and read some of them. There are some really good stuff here. I think there was just so many comments at once. It bumped you guys around, but you're all right. Let's see. Which ones should I take? Oh, wow, there's some good ones. Yeah, he did. I mean, in the end, he just won that thing. It was just a win. The electorate was slightly, more beneficial to Republicans. And 2 weeks before, Democrats had been saying, we're going to lose this because it's May, but come November, we're going to have all of our people out on the ground and we're going to win. They got to win by doing better among some of the. There are people that voted for Katie Hill that voted for Mike Garcia. There are. I mean, there's no other way unless these other 23% that needs to report comes in so heavily for Christy Smith that race tightens up significantly. And then it looks like just a flat out win for Mike Garcia. But he's going to have to campaign from now until November because that district's going to be hard to keep. The good thing for Republicans is that incumbency matters. It's a short period of time, but Garcia will use these 6 months to shore up his base of support. That's what makes an incumbent strong. They get a get out the vote operation. They get a base of support in their communities. They, especially those who have been there a while, they bring home the bacon. They have relationships. Basically that's how it goes. It takes time. It's not a lot of time for Garcia to do it, but he'll still have some time. And also it'll be almost like, well, it won't be almost like, it will be a total rematch from what it was before. Here, let's see. Let's go back. There was a really good one that I wanted to answer before. Yeah, I do think a Trump second term will be much, much different than his first term. Every president is. Every president's second term is a like an unchained kind of term. Bush in 2004, he said, that he earned political capital from his reelection and he intended to spend it. That's the way presidents feel when they win. It's an affirmation of their first term, the things that they had been doing in their first term that obviously the opposition party pushes back against when a president is reelected. Just like we saw with Obama, too. The Republicans had pushed back on almost everything, or tried. Anyway, I know not as much as some Republicans would have liked, but they pushed back. And really, it was only Obamacare where they had some kind of a mandate. A lot of the other things, when the voters went to the polls in 2012, they made their decision. It's an affirmation that they were good with him to continue to lead what was a weak recovery, but it was a recovery nonetheless. So Americans don't like to rock the boat, folks. They do not like to rock the boat. Let's get into this. Okay. This is a good question. All right. Is the Montana Senate seat Steve Daines out there, really at risk? It seems more like liberal fantasies and spin. Steve Daines is not the incumbent that they could beat out there. They have one seat because he's been rather moderate, and Matt was not a good candidate. The Republican candidate in 2018 was not a good candidate in Montana. The thing about Steve Daines, and I was just talking about it, when you're an incumbent, you get a base of support. Montana is an at-large district. So he basically represented everybody anyway before he went to Senate. Steve Daines has had a long history out there. He is not the kind of guy that they can beat. Now, the answer to that is no, that's a dream. That's a pipe dream. The reason why Democrats were able to hold on to it in 2018, it was a near 10-point edge nationally. It was a plus 8 or 9 Democrat advantage nationally. And he still was only to hold on. And Trump didn't really go after him, even though he said he was going to. He really didn't go after him because he had to shore up so many of those other seats. Indiana, much more working class than traditional rural and conservative, much more Trumplican. Mike Braun, a fantastic candidate. Rosendale was not a good candidate. You had a libertarian out there. The last minute, they said, we're bowing out and we're going to give our support to Rosendale. They still took a lot of votes. It just wasn't. It wasn't a real effort. I don't want to disparage anybody's campaign, but it wasn't a good candidate. It wasn't a good campaign. And John Tester is still seen, or was at the time, as relatively moderate. So I'm not really, we were a hold for Tester by 2 points. That's based on the model. That's basically, we did kind of strain over that because there wasn't good public polling. We didn't poll it ourselves, but we did poll similar demographics in states very close. And looking at the demographics of our own polling, there were some groups that Republicans had traditionally won in the past, but they weren't going to win them in 2018. Kramer had similar dynamic in his race. In the end, Kramer tightened it up enough. He blew out Heidi Heitkamp. But Kramer was a great candidate. He was. He was a congressman just very much like Steve Daines. Small state. Congressman that has a base of support. Goes for a Senate. Has good name recognition. People liked him. I just don't see that. Come on, guys. Throw some other ones at me here. Oh, the vaccine one. Where is that vaccine one? All right, it was there about the difference between how many people say they will get a vaccine and how many people actually do. Interestingly, we poll this thing every year. Well, we have over the last 4 years. Somebody's asked us to poll this thing. I don't know. It depends on the client. I can't really give out that stuff, but it's usually around 70% of American adults will tell us that they're going to get vaccinated. And bear with me a second because I think Rasmussen did, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rasmussen recently did a vaccination poll too. And the only reason why I know that is because we did the sponsorship for a while. Let's see. There it is. 70% likely. Oh, let me share this. This is perfect timing. Good job over there, guys. Got to give it to Rasmussen. They know how to polling headline stories. I think this one was sponsored by Bongino. All right. The Bongino report. So, it's really low. Are more eager to take a COVID-19 vaccine than the usual flu shot. This is what they're getting. We usually get around 7 in 10 that'll say they'll get the flu shot. All right, but they don't. In truth, maybe 40% of Americans will get a flu shot, but they say they will. Roughly I don't know with the flu vaccine, 53% who say it's very likely. I don't know what the flu vaccine is for Rasmussen, but it's about the same as what they have for this COVID-19 shot. And in the end, folks, it's never that much. Why? Because people don't really care. Could it be more with COVID because it's been made into such a big threat? I wouldn't be surprised. But what about those, and something was as low as 35, I think, last year with the flu shot, by the way, just to answer your question. I think it was 35 or 38 last year. And then, of course, it doesn't always work. And that same is true of all vaccines. I didn't. You guys can tell me what's going on with John James and Politico. We can talk about that too. But I usually don't like talking about stuff that I haven't seen or don't know yet. But basically, the efficacy rates come along with the burden estimates from the CDC every year. So even though about 7 in 10 will tell us they're going to get a flu shot, and 7 in 10 with COVID-19, in the end, maybe 40% of Americans actually do. And then they have efficacy rates for that 40%. Roughly half, it was effective on half, and then it wasn't as effective on the rest. So when people say we need to wait for a vaccine, there are a couple of questions that are implied with that. Number one, how effective is the vaccine going to be? The last time we tried to ram through a vaccine was the H1N1 vaccination during the pandemic of 2009. That hurt a lot of people. There were lawsuits galore, class action lawsuits over it. They missed their mark. Supposed to be 100 million vaccines administered. They got about 11 in the 6-month time period that they set as goals. Did not happen. And then what are we going to do with the half to 40%? Let's be generous. And let's say it's more than the traditional flu because it's COVID-19. And let's say that 65% of Americans actually get this vaccine. So really close to what Rasmussen is saying, although I don't think it would be anywhere near that, because 50% or 40% take it when about 70% take it, about 70% tell us they're going to take it. But let's be generous and let's give them 65%. What are we going to do with the other 35% of Americans who don't want to take this vaccine? What are we going to do with them? Are we going to force them to take it? Are we going to force their children to take it? Are there some Americans going to be allowed to go to the baseball game who took the vaccine, but others who refuse to take the vaccine allowed to go? Not allowed to go? Are there going to be cards or something like Dr. Fauci was dreaming about a couple of weeks ago? Are there going to be vaccination cards or serology testing cards? Where are we going with this? Where are we going with it? There are tons of coronavirus. See, I'm not taking that damn vaccine either, Obi. I'm not taking that damn vaccine either. I'll tell you right now. You want my own personal opinion? I'm with you guys on that 100%. I am not taking that vaccine. That's not happening. Why? Because even if I wanted to take it, I speak to too many vaccine researchers. This thing is going too quickly. It's going too quick. 5 years, when we had the U.S. military, and it's the Army, when we had their A team, their vaccine A team on the Ebola virus, it took them 5 years to get a vaccine. We still, Dr. Fauci, he got his name with age treatments, which a lot of people will argue against. It's not, I mean, we act like it's universally praised, but there are a lot of people who think Fauci's actually hurt a lot of people. All right. But we still don't have a vaccine for the disease that Dr. Fauci became famous for. We don't have it. There are tons of coronaviruses, not as novel as this one. We don't have a single vaccine for one. Not one. Not one. And if you guys were watching the interview I did, but quite frankly, the other day, I spilled the beans a little bit on some, but I don't want to get anybody in trouble over here. But we have been speaking to vaccine researchers who have been working on this vaccine now for weeks and weeks and weeks before it ever became a thing. And one of them, which has a big head start, they got a big jump on this thing. There's been articles in the Wall Street Journal saying they could have a vaccine by August. They could have one by September. They're on human trials right now. Their vaccine researchers tell us that the method traditionally used to vaccinate a virus like this did not work. They had to go through a complete, which is, by the way, for those of you not familiar, it's called the antigen method. One of the main vaccine researchers all over Fox. He's on every network. He's on MSNBC. He's on CNN. He's on Fox News. He was doing cartwheels last week. We're about to get started. We got the go ahead. And he goes in this big spiel about the antigen method. I had just spoken a couple weeks prior to people who are way ahead of him, and the antigen method didn't work. And they were debating, by the way, whether something like this happens in nature or not. And they don't want to say anything, and they don't want the wrath of the federal government. But in the end, many of them just, it's off the record conversations. I wish they would have. It's not a matter of courage. They don't want to lose their jobs. So I don't want to paint it like that, but they don't want to lose their jobs. But I wish somebody would just come out and say it. This thing had to have been altered. It had to have been altered. And I'm not saying the Chinese meant to release it, but I'm telling you, they're reconstructing RNA to be able to build this vaccine, construct this vaccine, so it will work. Traditional methods do not work, or at least that's what this research has found. And this research has been being touted everywhere. And when we get a little bit closer to the story, closer meaning more people are coming out and saying things about it, I will tell you the company. Some of you are probably smart enough to figure it out already. But the bottom line is they don't believe this thing could be developed that quickly. They just don't believe it. And that goes with history. If you could point me to a successful vaccine that has been developed this quickly, then knock yourself out. I'll wait. Some of you detractors out there, I see you. Tell me. Point to one right now. You won't be able to. It's not there. These things take forever. Not forever, but they take a while, especially if you want them done safe. And the last time that we did crank one out really quick, swine flu wasn't as novel. Well, at least that's what some of them, I'm not a doctor. That's what some of them say. But they cranked it out as quick as they possibly could. And it turned out that it was not really safe. So that's what, we ended up with more people being hurt than was necessary. I'm still waiting. Yeah, don't hold your breath. It's not going to come. You cannot find me a vaccine that was developed in 6 months to a novel virus specifically. Oh my God, if you're just droning on, we don't talk about, we don't defend politicians here. Next question. Nobody's defending a politician or one politician over the other. You missed the other show. I think I recognize that guy anyway. Guy's a clown. You missed the whole show. We don't defend politicians over here. Shouldn't politicians, whether it's Trump, whether it's Chuck Schumer, whether it's Dr. Fauci, might as well be a politician now. Nobody should be promising a vaccine that quickly because it's never been done before. Just like closing down the economy has never been done before. With far worse, making its way through the population. We have never done this. Never. Yeah. I don't want to get into the issue of whether you should vaccinate children or not. I'm not my job is to look at numbers and tell, whether or not, some of this is historically feasible or not. And all I can do is tell you that there is, for the tuck and hide people who are waiting for a vaccine to come, and then you're just not going to open the economy until there's a vaccine, or we should all just hide until there's a vaccine. There will be nothing left for you to open and come out to. The damage is already significant, and the numbers we go over are they're not done, folks. They're not done. And we don't even, it's almost immeasurable. Bloomberg has a really cool index if you guys ever wanted to look at it. Basically the relationship between rising GDP and basically rising GDP, falling GDP, and its relationship with quality of life. That's neat. But when it comes to getting specific numbers, it's almost immeasurable because, like I've said before, how many women are not getting pap smears right now? How many drug addicts didn't make it to their NA meeting or their AA meeting if they're an alcoholic, and they fell back into drug addiction? We were making, and those of you who know me know that opiate abuse is a big issue for me. Opioid addiction and addiction in general. It's a big thing for me. It's near and dear to my heart. How many people didn't make it to their NA meeting, but so they relapsed, or new addictions now. Down here in Florida, abuse hotlines are going through the roof. The cost of doing this is almost immeasurable. It's not going to just be found in a GDP number, is my point. And it never was going to be. Never was going to be. And just to tell you folks, another word about the vaccine and the coronavirus and where it came from. It is not a conspiracy theory that to tell you the coronavirus did not come from a wet market in Wuhan. It didn't. The Five Eyes don't believe it came from a wet market in Wuhan. Nobody does. There is never any evidence to suggest it does. All of the evidence suggests that it came from a laboratory in Wuhan, a Chinese laboratory. It did not come from a wet market. That is a phony talking point that they made up to tell you so you wouldn't flip out. That's the kind of information they drip on you little by little. It's not just the United States. It's not. There was never any evidence to suggest it came from a wet market. And it's not just one paper out of the South China Institute of Technology. I think you really need to do more research. If you're still talking about a wet market in Wuhan, then you're totally wrapped up in this. You are lost in the sauce. And I'm sorry for you. There's not much I can do to help you at that point. But yeah, I did see some good other ones here. Yeah, this 1976. There's never been a historic precedent for a vaccine being developed this quickly the way they're promising you, but there is historic precedent for vaccines being pushed out there that were unsafe, that hurt people badly. And in fact, if you talk to people who do research on vaccines and they believe in their work and they do good work, if you talk to them, there is one of the biggest fears that they have is that this thing will be rushed out too quickly. It will not be done correctly, safely, and that the anti-vaccine lobby is going to wind up with tons of, not even propaganda, but just tons of ammunition to use against them. Because if this thing is pushed out and it winds up hurting a ton of people, then they're going to have a hard time. So you're actually doing more damage to the industry that you're trying to support, that you're not supporting, you're relying on them. There are people who will chill out, want to sit in their home until, until a vaccine comes. They're relying on it like they rely on their next breath of air. And they're doing, by putting that much pressure on these people, you're doing more harm to them in the end. You're doing much more harm to them. Much more. So, I mean, that's unfair. And they worry about that because there is that anti-vaccine lobby that is effective when we have mess ups. That's when they're most effective. So polio took years, right? It took years. I mean, it's not realistic. It's simply not realistic. All right. It's just the way it is. Hey, Gina, thanks for shooting over that link. That was good. Look, we got about 13 minutes left. If you guys got some more questions, that's great. If not, I'm going to go look soon at pictures of the house. By the way, I am such a believer in the information that I give to you guys. Like I said, outdoor transmission, how absolutely worthless it is to bar people from kayaking or for going for walks in the park. I'm absolutely a believer in that. Like I showed you the pictures from our fishing trip. I'm going to go again. I've been bitten by this bug. Like I told you on Monday, I forgot how much I love to bass fish. It was like one of my favorite things. A piece of my soul holds a rod and reel. And ever since that trip, I can't get it out of my mind. All I want to do is go back to bass fishing. Should I show you guys really? You know what? Oh, did I not keep those pictures of those lunkers? I'll get one for you. Somebody wants to see it. Oh, I'll show you one. Oh, I'll get you one. Oh, hold on. Give me a second. There's just some monsters out there. Okay, this one I think is my biggest one. I asked Laura, I said, because as I'm doing it, I'm texting her and I'm like, babe, is this it? Is this the one? And she said, yeah, I got a list. I remember you saying 5.5 pounds, 6 pounds, whatever it may be. So there were so many pictures that I was forgetting which one was the right one. This one was the biggest one. Oh my God, this thing's a beauty. Wait till you see it. Here it comes. And absolutely, yeah, I know some of you really love to largemouth bass fish too. And that's the one thing I'm going to miss the most about Florida. There's a lot of things. I'm going to miss my church. I love my church. My kids, they have, I don't know, the community, like our own little community in this city, not the whole city because I don't like it, but our own little community. The teachers, my children's teachers, just great people, really wonderful people who would love to be teaching their kids, by the way. I'm going to miss some things like that. But all the years I've been here, I didn't take advantage of the bass fishing. For those of you who bass fish, you do know this is the best state in the country for bass fishing. And people go to places like Lake Okeechobee, and that's famed. And I didn't have the time. I worked too much. And before leaving, I said, you know what, the hell with this. And the data doesn't show that I'm at any risk being on a boat throwing a scum frog out over the lily pads. It's ridiculous. Look at this monster. Bam! Look at that thing. What? I've been bit by it so much. All I can think about is going, you know what? Today, we always find out every Friday. We talk to the builder. I don't know we're moving soon. I'm not exactly sure when though. Yeah, right. That's a monster fish. My son's fish was bigger. He beat me. That was the biggest one of the day for a while. It was 8 pounds, 14 ounces. And we were really trying to get him. He was killing it. His first fish was like 7.9. That was his very first largemouth bass. It was a 7 pound something. I think it was 7.9 or 7.6. If he watches it and I rob him of a few ounces, he'll correct me later. You better go back on Monday and tell everybody that fish was 7 pounds, 11 ounces. Don't you rob me of my 2-3 ounces. He'll do that. No, we don't eat it, Melissa. We put it back and wait for somebody else to catch it for another day. If it was like hurt or something, sometimes it's unfortunate, but the way the hook sets work, if it was hurt and it was like a trophy fish and I felt it was going to die, then I may bring it to a taxidermist. But bass don't fish that. They don't taste that good. There are a lot of trout. When I go trout fishing, I do eat them. Largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, they just don't taste that great. Saltwater bass are good. I love sea bass and even grouper. Those are in the same family. But freshwater, largemouth, and smallmouth, they don't taste great. We fish for them for the sport, for the fight, for the strike. They hit top water it's very, very violent strike. I was going to say pretty, but it is pretty, but it's really violence. The thing will come up and crush the lure. And when it's a really big one, it makes a different kind of sound. So, it's big. It's like a clunk clunk instead of a splash. So the very first one my son caught was like 7 something. And then right before we had to go, he got one that was the big one of the day. And that was, I believe, 9 pounds, 3 ounces. It was just under, really close to a 10 pounder. Perch are delicious. Yeah, I totally agree. Perch are really good. We used to do when the whole fish and eggs, steak and eggs and fish or whatever in the morning when I was a kid, because we did fish a lot when I was a kid, perch and even like bluegills. I just never really fished for them because they weren't like fun, but they are, but for a kid, they're fun. And for an adult, you really want to go after something bigger. I don't know too many kids who could say their very first fish was almost 8 pounds. And I knew it was too, because as soon as I was teaching him how to set the hook, when he pulled the rod back, it only got to like this high instead of when my hook set, it goes back here. And, his was like, ugh, and he hit weight. So I knew it was big. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the luckiest little kid in the world. He's 10. I will keep fishing. I love it. And I forgot. And I work my butt off. And, I'm just at the point where you got to work. You got to feel like you're working for something, guys, right? At this point, you should just feel lucky if you got a job, because of the economic situation we're in. But look at that's what I mean when I'm always fighting and yelling about this, about whether or not it was wise to commit economic suicide or not. Economics is everything. It is. Some people say, well, you just care about money. That's ridiculous. Economics is your health. Economics is your family. Economics is your education. Economics is the American dream, home ownership. It's everything. Without a good economy, and a stable financial situation. Even humanists who love Abraham Maslow, the hierarchy of needs. You cannot get to self-actualization and become the citizen you want to be if you can't meet your basic hierarchy of needs. The economy is everything. And self-actualization is at the point where like you're happy, you're spiritually happy, you're spiritually settled, all of that. I mean, it encompasses everything in the middle. It's really cool. It's Abraham Maslow, but in case you guys want to read it, it's called The Hierarchy of Needs. And a lot of liberals like that because they're not traditional spiritualists, but that's actually why I'm making the point. Most liberals want to keep the economy shut down. You can't meet your basic needs. So you'll never get to what's above your basic needs. Food, water, shelter is like the human need to be loved or have relationships. And then eventually, when you can meet all of those needs, you climb the hierarchy of needs, you can reach self-actualization where you're happy and you can be a productive member of your society, your community, whatever, a good dad, a good mom. All of that falls away without a good economy. Money doesn't buy you happiness, but it does give you the ability to not have to constantly stress and panic and work for money, and stress for money. You cannot meet the rest of those needs. You cannot climb the hierarchy. And that's a shame. And I don't mean you got to be rich to get there. I'm saying you have to have these basic needs met to do so. The economy is everything. And yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. Well, I'm hoping soon. The estimated completion date was in July. Even with social distancing, I was very blessed and very lucky. I got my permitting in before a lot of this happened. And my neighbors, because we got a larger lot on a cul-de-sac, my neighbors around me, they didn't. And I felt so bad for them because it like delayed their build by like 6 months. It really stinks. And some of us have been waiting since Florence because we had areas where we wanted to go during Florence and then it flooded things. And okay, maybe that's not the best place to go. Time to find higher ground. And then the builder would, said, well, it's going to take a while for me to get out from underneath this. Do you want to wait? And those of us who did wait, some of us waited until now, and then this happened. We got very lucky. We were extremely lucky. And they're like really professional. They work with the crews they work with all the time, so they can social distance and complete it. But that's why I kind of went off the other week when people, the mortgages are going to bounce back. It's all going to bounce back. Banks are now requiring more money down to lend. Oh, well, they'll find that money. No, they won't. They're spending that money to survive right now. They're not just going to find it. That's a dream that's lost. That's a broken dream. That's what economics means. So I'm just having a chance to rant and rave about this, but that's why, maybe it's a good thing. I can give you guys a little bit of perspective about why I take the roles I do. It's more than just a number. My job is to look at numbers, but I know they're more than just numbers, is my point. But look, I got a job, but Cuomo says I can't work. He's crazy, man. I don't know what to tell you. Look, here's the map again. The whole state is yellow, even though the whole state didn't have problems. And Lisa took great pictures of empty hospitals in New York. This will wind up being more closures than there were beds that were needed. That never happened, which is why, again, they wanted to push people out of the hospitals as quickly as possible and back into nursing homes. And they made those decisions without accurate, complete, or reliable data. They made bad decisions and they kill people. It's not hyperbolic. They killed people, forcing people back into nursing homes. Indoor environments, home transmissions are the top risk category, the highest risk category. You're around somebody in a closed area, repeated exposure to infection, and that is how you get it. That's it. But I'm going to go ahead and close this out because it is 11:59. I'm going to go talk to the builder. So, it's Friday. It's freewheeling Friday. I just wanted to freewheel it, and answer questions on the way out. But you guys, don't forget to join us Monday. Tomorrow, next week, we'll get into a lot of those transcripts that we've been pulling up. And we went through a little bit with Samantha Power, a little bit with Susan Rice. But the point of next week is to explain once and for all that these people knew that there was not any evidence or any intelligence or anything to do with collusion. And we've left Brennan largely untouched until now. But Brennan is a big deal. And we're going to get into him next Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right. This way it'll give you a heads up. And if you guys watch on Facebook Live, or even if you don't forget to like the page, People's Pundit Daily, and vice versa, because of course we want those metrics on everything. The best way to support the show is to subscribe to PPD. You could do that by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. See you guys on Monday. All the best. Be safe, be healthy, and we'll circle back to you on Monday. Later, folks.